Good morning, Secretary Mayorkas.
Good morning.
Is there a crisis at our southern border?
Senator, there is a very significant...
That's a yes or no question.
There's a very we are facing.
Yes or no,
at the
is
southern
there a
border.
crisis?
I believe I've addressed that question.
So you're
Senator.
refusing to answer. Will you answer if there's a crisis?
Therefore, we are dedicating the resources...
Okay, so you're refusing to answer. Is there a crisis at our southern border, yes or no?
Senator, I'm very proud to work alongside...
So you refuse to
support...
answer. Let me ask you the next question. Has the crisis at our southern border made Americans less safe, yes or no?
Senator, we are dedicated...
I don't want a discourse. It's a yes or no question.
Senator, we have a challenge of...
You refuse to answer the question.
Security of the
Next
American
question,
people.
Mr. Mayorkas. Has the crisis made aliens less safe, yes or no?
Senator, we are seeking...
So you won't answer that question either. How many migrants have died under President Biden?
To
So do you know the answer? Do you know how many died?
I do not.
You do not. Of course you don't. I know how many died, 853. Suddenly, 2021, what happens? You get in office, and that red line are dead bodies. I've been on the Rio Grande, and I've seen dead bodies floating there who've drowned because of your refusal to do your job. From the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal 2 weeks ago ran an article entitled, "It's like a graveyard. Record numbers of migrants are dying at the border." The story begins with this chilling line, quote, "Eagle Pass, Texas. Local officials keep a refrigerated truck to hold the bodies of migrants who drown in the currents of the Rio Grande while trying to cross the border into the U.S." How many children have been sexually assaulted by human traffickers under the Biden administration?
Senator, this is precisely why we instituted...
I don't want a lecture. It's a question. How many children have been sexually assaulted by human traffickers under your administration?
Senator, this is exactly why on January 5th, we announced
Again,
the parole
do you know
program.
how many? Do you know how many children have been sexually assaulted?
This is why we...
Okay, you're going to refuse to answer that question as well. True or false, Secretary Mayorkas, 2020 was the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. Is that true or false?
It is certainly the lowest level of immigration in many, many years.
And boom, what happens? You show up, and that red line is you. That red line is Joe Biden.
In the United States.
Oh, so your testimony under oath, subject to perjury, is that you have not released any murderers, rapists, or child molesters among the 5.5 million. Is that your testimony?
Mr. Chairman, may I have the opportunity
No, you may not. You may answer my question. Gotaways are the people that get away that you know about. Now, what happened under your administration? Boom, you get in. And they go from below 180,000 to 600,000. Do you know how many of those are murderers?
That is precisely
So you refuse to answer the question. You know, what's the result of massive gotaways? Well, one of the results is drug overdoses. And we now have, last year, over 100,000 overdoses who died, the majority from Chinese fentanyl streaming across the border. Some months ago, Karine Jean-Pierre stood up at a White House briefing and said, people are not just walking across the border. Was she telling the truth?
Senator, you are...
Was she telling the truth?
So profoundly disrespecting...
Was she telling the truth?
22 years
okay,
of government service.
You get to answer questions. You don't
Senator,
get to give speeches.
Senator...
This is a photograph from just one day along the Rio Grande of hundreds of thousands of people walking across the border. You have allowed this to happen. The photograph that was before, what are these wristbands?
I don't know what they are.
You
Senator.
don't know what they are. Mr. Secretary, you have just testified to the American people you're incompetent at your job, because I've been to the southern border, and if you go to the southern border, along the southern border, you see thousands of these wristbands because the illegal immigrants wear them. The drug cartels, every color corresponds to how many thousands of dollars they owe the cartels. You have turned these cartels into multi-billion-dollar criminal organizations, and these are modern-day leg irons because these are children being sold into sex slavery, and you don't even know what they are. That is astonishing. Mr. Secretary, how many children have been sold into sex slavery under your administration?
Senator, we are taking it to the cartels.
How many
and the
children have been
smuggling
sold into sex slavery?
in an
Do you know how many children have been
unprecedented-
sold into sex slavery?
to an unprecedented degree?
Mr. Secretary, I want to say to you right now,
It is
your
precisely-
behavior is disgraceful, and the deaths, the children assaulted, the children raped, they are at your feet, and if you had integrity, you would resign. And I will tell you, the men and women of the Border Patrol, they've never had a political leader undermine them. They despise you, Mr. Secretary, because you're willing to let children be raped to follow political orders. This is a crisis, it's a disgrace, and you won't even admit this human tragedy is a crisis.
What the senator said was revolting. I'm not going to address it.
Your refusal to do your job is revolting.
Senator.
Mr. Secretary, do you agree with the president that we should ban the private ownership of assault weapons in America?
Senator, I do.
What is an assault weapon?
It is, for example, an AK-47.
Can you give me a definition other than just pointing to a specific weapon? Would there be other weapons besides an AK-47 you would ban?
There very well are.
And I thank you for your
All of
service,
the-
but if you
all
could
of the
answer
law
my
enforcement,
question. Because you won't give straight answers.
I think I just did.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Do you have a definition of an assault weapon?
I am confident there is a technical definition of what is an assault weapon.
Mr. Secretary, our southern border is not secure, is it?
Senator, I have spoken about this. I believe I've addressed this earlier in the hearing.
Why don't you
Let
address
me-
it again? So
And let me assure you that we are
it's
doing
secure
so.
because we're trying to secure it? Are we succeeding?
Senator, we are so focused on the security of our southern border. We are doing so much with
But you're
respect
not
to
succeeding.
the surge of personnel.
You're not succeeding.
Oh, the
But
hemisphere.
my job is to worry about the United States.
As
Mr.
is
Chairman.
mine. As is mine.
And here's my question. Let me try to rephrase it. And I really do wish, I understand the position you're in, but you really should try to do a better job of answering the questions. And under the Biden administration, we've had the most fentanyl coming into our country in the history of ever. How can you possibly say the southern border is secure? You don't want to do it, Mr. Secretary. That's what it's beginning to look like, because you think our borders ought to be open. And it would be more intellectually honest if you just say that.
This phone app allows, and I'm going to quote from your own fact sheet, it allows, and I quote, non-citizens without appropriate documents for admission to schedule an appointment to come to the border. They can now go on their phone and schedule a time to come to the border and then be admitted. It's like a concierge service for illegal immigrants. My question is, you didn't think the border crisis was bad enough that now we're going to have an app that allows illegals to schedule their appointments and come and be admitted to this country? So rather than building a wall, Mr. Secretary, you have built Ticketmaster for illegal immigrants.
You are, Senator, you are conflating programs. Let me explain
Well,
to
just
you.
respond to this. Is it true that they are given no interviews, asked no questions, and simply released into the country?
Let me explain.
You had nearly 1 million people get away from Border Patrol, evade Border Patrol's detection and detention between 2022 and 2023. You have no idea how many of those people were carrying fentanyl or other drugs with them, do you?
Senator, the expert view that I received is that approximately 90% of the fentanyl
That's
that
a
is brought
totally
in-
made-up number, Mr. Secretary,
may,
and you
thank
know it. Mr. Secretary, you understand that you have a credibility problem with the Congress and with the American people, don't you?
I have unflinching confidence in the integrity of my conduct.
And with 108,000 Americans dying of drug overdoses last year alone, with those drugs flooding across the border, you think everything is just hunky-dory.
That is absolutely not true. Senator,
No,
I understand the
I
gravity of the
understand your
challenge.
answer. You said it's not true, and I disagree with you. My constituents are saying, who's accountable? Who's accountable? Who's paying a price? Who got fired? Well, you haven't been fired. You should be fired, but you haven't been fired because you were carrying out the policies of the Biden administration.
Senator, the issue of individuals absconding from law enforcement is a challenge that
And you were failing in that challenge, Mr. Secretary.
If I may
You and the
finish.
Biden administration policies are contributing to what is happening on the border, and according to Ms. McConville, she credited the Biden broken border policies with contributing to the death of her son, and you won't even have the common decency to apologize. You simply lost all credibility, Mr. Secretary.